Welcome to the story of Ruth. In the days when the judges ruled, we're back in the book of Judges, a separate biblical book entirely, but it's set deliberately in the days of the judges. There was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and 2 sons. Phyllis Tribble, very importantly, weighs in on this. Feminist scholar Phyllis Tribble. A man's world tells a woman's story. That's the theme that she's going to develop throughout her treatment of this book. And of course, it's an issue. Do you agree with Phyllis? Do you disagree with her? Is this a woman's story told in the larger patriarchal society? Yes, it's a patriarchal society, but even within it, there's allowance for a story of a woman. The woman has all the narrative power in this story. What do you think? Is Phyllis right? With consummate artistry, the book of Ruth presents aged Naomi and youthful Ruth as they struggle for survival in a patriarchal environment. These women bear their own burdens. No God promises them blessing. No man rushes to their rescue. They risk bold decisions and shocking acts to work out their own salvation. Interesting for a religious book that found its way into the Bible, that there's no God promising them blessing, that they work out their own redemption, their own salvation, their own rescue. They do it. How interesting for a biblical book. 4 scenes, argues Phyllis Tribble, and that's a literary pattern. So on the level of literary criticism, 4 scenes, that's the argument, with a circular pattern in which the 3rd and 4th scenes return to the concerns and the issues of the first 2 scenes. Let's look at it in detail. The name of the man was Elimelech, the name of his wife, Naomi. The names of his 2 sons were Machlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. So here we have a little bit of a family tree. Elimelech, Naomi, Machlon, and Chilion are the sons. And they took Moabite wives. The name of one was Orpah, the name of the other, Ruth. Now, why do we have here a picture of Oprah Winfrey? Well, here's a little bit of cultural knowledge. When Oprah was born, this is true, her mother wanted to give her a biblical name, and she wanted to take it from the biblical book of Ruth. Only thing is, she transposed the letters of Orpah and instead named her daughter Oprah. And that's how Oprah gets her name. Bet you didn't know that. That alone is worth the price of the course. Before, there was such a negative sanction with regard to marrying non-Israelites, goyim, people of the nations. After all, it's a patrilineal society. The descent goes through the father in ancient times. That evolved in Judaism so that it became matrilineal through the mother, but in ancient times it was patrilineal. Here, recorded in a matter-of-fact way, quite in keeping with the temper of the times. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. That's what we're told in the book of Judges. Bears witness to the historical setting of the whole book. They took wives, bought wives. Is that the way wives were acquired? Is there any romance at all mentioned? At least none mentioned. But the result, 10-year marriages. Only the husbands die. Does the shidduch method in which marriages are arranged really work better than the idea that it has to be romantic? When they had lived there about 10 years, both Machlon and Chilion also died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. Phyllis Tribble weighs in. The security of husband and children, which a male-dominated culture affords its women, is hers no longer. The males die. They are non-persons. Their presence in the story ceases. So she sees this as a literary development, something that's intentional in the literature. In a male-dominated patriarchal culture, men represent security, but they die. They're taken out of the story. The security element is gone, absent. Then she started to return with her daughters-in-law from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab that Hashem, the Lord, had considered his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she had been living, she and her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to go back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house." Again, interesting turn of phrase. It doesn't say father's house, to your mother's house. Because the woman in ancient Israelite culture ruled the home, even though it was a patriarchal society. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead, as you've dealt with the dead and with me. Tribble, weighing in again. Unexpected in patriarchal culture is the phrase mother's house. It emphasizes the radical separation of these females from all males. And that, she believes, is intentional in the narrative. Separation, radical separation. The males are completely written out of the narrative. And it's just these women on their own. Hashem grant that you may find security, each of you in the house of your husband. She kissed them, and they wept aloud. Tribble observes, once they were wives of husbands, and that status would be desirable again. But in the meantime, they are without men. So again, there's recognition in the narrative that it is a patriarchal culture. But it's totally focused on these women. And they are the heroines of the story. They said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb that they may become your husbands?" Tribble again observes, nowhere does God intervene in a direct way. Human speech alone interprets divine activity. Human speech interprets what God is doing, but God is not intervening directly. It's up to the women. That's Tribble's entire point. The women are making things happen. It's a proto-feminist story, arguably. At least that's the issue. 3 times Naomi urges them to turn back, and each time citing the necessity to find husbands. If their lives are to be fulfilled, they must remarry, because a male-dominated society offers no other chance, no other possibility for them. Plus, the chances of remarrying are far better in Moab than they are here in Judah. The text goes on, "Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I should have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you then wait until they are grown? Would you then refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, it has been far more bitter for me than for you, because the hand of Hashem, the Lord, has turned against me." Then they wept aloud. Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, will I die. There will I be buried. May the Lord do thus and so to me and more, if even death parts me from you." Classic passage in the Hebrew Bible. Poetically famous and often cited, very often at weddings in our own day. Both Orpah and Ruth are in charge here, aren't they? They have the narrative power. Orpah doesn't submit to anybody. She decides. And Ruth decides, contrary to Naomi's orders. They take the initiative as subjects of verbs. This is a very close reading of the narrative itself. They are subjects of the verbs, differentiating themselves from their mother-in-law. And often depicted, of course, in art down through the ages, biblically themed art. This being one of the famous stories of the biblical text. So Naomi returned together with Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, who came back with her from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Scene 2. That was scene 1 we just finished. Now, second scene, if we do a close literary analysis of this text. Now, Naomi had a kinsman on her brother's side, a prominent, rich man of the family of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Tribble once again weighing in. The narrator continues to affirm fullness over emptiness. The men represented security. They represented fullness. They are written out of the story entirely. Nonetheless, the narrator affirms fullness over emptiness. The kinsman part of Naomi's extended family, because she is not without relatives. The kinsman is also a man of substance, and the Hebrew text declares it strongly. Ish gibor chayil, a man, a great man of substance, contrasting with the emptiness of Naomi. Now, earlier in the story, the males represent death, emptiness, symbolically. But now, Boaz begins to restore the balance between male and female as creatures of life. We don't know his name at first. It's withheld. And that builds, on a literary level, interest and importance. We want to know who this man is. And of course, we think about how much he makes. He is well off. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain, behind someone whose sight I may find favor." She said to her, "Go, my daughter." Here, Ruth leads. She just informs Naomi of her decision. Pretty remarkable in a patriarchal society. So she went. She came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant, who was in charge of the reapers, "To whom does this young woman belong?" That, it's observed, is a very patriarchal question. Don't ask her name. Just find out the identity of the owner. The question fits the culture, but it doesn't fit this woman, who, Tribble argues, is in tension with that culture. This is Phyllis Tribble's argument. Woman in tension with a patriarchal culture. A woman's story in a man's world. Whenever we read some critic, an article, a book, the first thing we ask is, what is the angle of this author? What's that author trying to argue? There's always an argument. And Phyllis Tribble is bold about hers. We just have to read her carefully. Woman in tension with a patriarchal culture. The servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers." So she came, and she has been on her feet from early this morning until now, without resting even for a moment. Tribble comments that the social and familial famine for these women need not yield to physical hunger. The narrative is written deliberately to emphasize now bounty instead of hunger. And it's the woman who has found it, chosen it, made it happen, in stark contrast with the beginning of the story that emphasizes physical famine and, of course, the death of the males. Now, here she is with the reapers. It's the very opposite. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter, do not glean in another field, or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped, and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." Boaz acknowledges, recognizes that Ruth isn't any ordinary person. Concern for this foreign woman marks him, sets him off as a true child of Israel. But we have to read between the lines again, since Hebrew texts don't mince words. We've pointed that out. The ancient text invites us to dive into it, to jump into it, to become part of the story ourselves in the way we understand it, what we supply to it. Is something going on here between the lines? Is there an attraction here? Of course, Boaz is playing the part of the wealthy aristocrat, overlooking things. But is there something more beneath it? Beneath the role playing? Then she fell prostrate with her face to the ground and said, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" There's a certain formality in the way the text is written. It comes off very formal in its style. Why should you take notice of me? But the argument is that the formality masks a romantic attraction. And that draws us all the more into the story. But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before." It's a beautiful literary echo of Genesis chapter 12. Whereas we recall Abraham is told to leave the land of his mother and father, his homeland, and go to a place, into a land that he did not know, that he has not yet seen. And that same theme is beautifully echoed here in the book of Ruth. And of course, we want to consider even more what Phyllis Tribble has to say on page 177. These ancient memories echo now as Boaz speaks to Ruth. The ancient memories of Genesis 12 and the call to Abraham. He describes her as the one who left her father and her mother and her native land to come to a people whom she did not know. This description validates the analogy between Abraham and Ruth. An analogy between Abraham and Ruth? Ruth is like another Abraham? The woman is like an Abraham? If Tribble is right, that's pretty bold in the literature, isn't it? That her earlier words to Naomi implied. Moreover, Boaz adds an ingredient which was both clearly present in the call of Abraham and noticeably absent in the choice of Ruth, the ingredient of divine blessing. May Hashem grant your action due recompense, and may your payment be full from Hashem, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. That's the added ingredient, present in the call of Abraham and noticeably absent in the choice of Ruth, in Ruth's choice, and that is divine blessing. In other words, these women aren't looking on any blessing from God. They've got the audacity, the chutzpah to do it themselves, to find their own redemption, their own salvation. When the blessing comes, it's invoked by Boaz, not by the women. Boaz's language envelops Ruth within the Abrahamic paradigm of the foreigner who breaks with the past and receives the promise of blessing for the future. Then she added, "May I continue to find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, even though I am not one of your servants." Ruth speaks with characteristic deference. If this deference results from Ruth's own decision, then the actions of Boaz in her behalf mean reaction, not initiative. The story doesn't censure Boaz for dereliction of duty, but it does subordinate him to the women. Very important observation. Subordinates him, the rich, powerful man, to the women. He has patriarchal power, yes. He's a rich man, but he does not have narrative power. And the book, of course, is not called the book of Boaz. It's the book of Ruth. Who remembers Boaz? But everybody remembers Ruth. Even Oprah. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some of this bread. Dip your morsel in the sour wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain. She ate until she was satisfied. She had some left over. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, "Let her glean even among the standing sheaves, and don't reproach her. You must all pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles, and leave them for her to glean, and don't rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. What Ruth has determined to do, she has done. She did it. It was her initiative, and she accomplished what she intended. And with that, the episode ends. And a new episode. She picked it up and came into the town, And her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned. Then she took out and gave her what was left over after she herself had been satisfied. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? Where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." So she told her mother-in-law of whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I worked is Boaz." Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by Hashem, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi said to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our nearest kin." Well, is Naomi a woman of her culture who waits for the man to act first? She hasn't sought out Boaz, but only through the choice of Ruth and the chance of cause. She hasn't sought out Boaz, but only through the choice of Ruth do we have Boaz on the scene, added to the chance of cause, a little element of chance that he notices her. So maybe Naomi is a woman of culture, but what about Ruth? Then Ruth the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay close by my servants until they have finished all my harvest.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is better, my daughter, that you go out with his young women. Otherwise you might be betrothed in another field, or bothered rather, in another field." So she stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. The third scene. Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you so that it may be well with you." Again, not waiting for God to act. Moving from being the receiver of calamity to the agent of change. That's Phyllis Tribble's analysis. Now, here is our kinsman Boaz, with whose young women you have been working. See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now wash and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor, but don't make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Well, here we have the original Hebrew text with highlighted in red the term that's translated uncover his feet, his feet. Margalotav is translated as feet. But really, if we wanted to say his feet, we'd just say raglav, not margalotav. So what's going on? Is there something hidden in this text that might suggest it's something more than the feet that are uncovered? And that's where the text just may get a little bit racy. Ruth tells Boaz what to do. Ruth herself, writes Tribble, is in charge. She's in charge. Spread your wing or your kanaf over your maidservant, for you are a redeemer. The foot of the bedstead is another way it could be rendered, but a similar word to margalotav happens to be pearls, incidentally. Again, some tantalizing suggestion that it may be something more than the feet that are being uncovered. Just how much of the lower part of his body she is to uncover remains tantalizingly uncertain, observes Tribble. Sexual overtones are certainly present. Surely at this point, the reader thinks the man will take over. She said to her, "All that you tell me, I will do." Ruth agrees, rather easily. She went down to the threshing floor and did just as her mother-in-law had instructed. When Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was in contented mood, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" It's different from the first meeting, where he says, "Whose servant are you?" Now it's direct, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak, your wing," kanaf in Hebrew, which may have some religious symbolism, by the way, "over your servant, for you are next of kin." It might be a subtle way of saying that she's becoming part of the house of Israel now, by virtue of the cloak, the wing being spread over her. Naomi said that Boaz would take charge, but no, Ruth takes charge. She recalls his language, "Under whose wings have you come to take refuge?" and challenges Boaz to be the occasion of divine blessing in her life, i.e. marriage, a defier of custom. Boaz is a reactor to the initiative of the woman. That's a feminist reading of the text. Is it right? He said, "May you be blessed by Hashem, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask. For all the assembly of my people know you are a worthy woman." An eshet chayil, which is a very famous phrase in Hebrew literature. A woman of valor is another way to render that. And very much fits in with a feminist reading of the text, matching the earlier description of Boaz as a man of worth. "But now, though it's true that I am a near kinsman, there is another kinsman more closely related than I. Remain this night, and in the morning, if he will act as your next of kin for you, good, let him do it. If he is not willing to act as next of kin for you, then, as Hashem lives, I will act as next of kin for you. Lie down until morning." And that's a part of ancient Near East law, that the nearest kinsman gets first dibs, as it were. And if only the nearest kinsman doesn't exercise his right, then the next in line, in this case Boaz, has the option. A compromising position occasions a command performance, observes Phyllis Tribble. And here's the command performance. She lay at his feet until morning, but got up before one person could recognize another, for he said, "It must not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor." Boaz distances himself because, after all, he's the patriarch. It must not be known that the woman came. Then he said, "Bring the cloak you are wearing and hold it out." So she held it, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her back. Then he went into the city. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, "How did things go with you, my daughter?" Then she told her all the man had done for her, saying, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" By failing to report specifically, is the narrator basically just covering for Ruth? Question. She replied, "Wait, my daughter, till you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." She began counseling action. Good feminist action. Now she's saying, be patient. Wait. Scene 4. Again, the idea that the whole thing is circular, the scenes 3 and 4 returning to the issues of the first 2. No sooner had Boaz gone up to the gate and sat down there next to then the next of kin of whom Boaz had spoken came passing by. So Boaz said, "Come over, friend, sit down." And he went over and sat down. It's a public gathering, entirely in a man's world, because that's what the men do. They haggle it all out in public. They're the patriarchs. Then Boaz took 10 men of the elders, sit down here, he said to the next of kin. Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling a parcel of land that belonged to our kinsman Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if not, tell me so that I may know, for there is no one prior to you to redeem it, and I come after you. So he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, the day you acquire the field from the hand of Naomi, you are also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead man, to maintain the dead man's name on his inheritance. At this, the next of kin said, I cannot redeem it for myself without damaging my own inheritance. So you take my right of redemption yourself. Now, this is the custom in former times concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, one took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the next of kin said to Boaz, acquire it for yourself, he took off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses that I have acquired from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Machlon. And that, of course, includes Ruth. A chance meeting in the fields, followed by a daring meeting on the threshing floor, has worked its way to denouement through customary channels of patriarchy, writes Phyllis Tribble. The Redeemer fades from the story. As foil to Boaz, he's finished, without a name. We don't even know, we don't care his name. Anonymity implies judgment. The fact that he's never named is sort of a judgment on him. So it's deliberate that he's not named in the story. He refused to restore the name of the dead to his inheritance by keeping the field in the family. But of course, men alone decide the future of women. In private conversation, Boaz made her welfare the sole concern, to do the Redeemer's part for her. But in public discussion with the men, he makes Ruth the means for achieving a male purpose. The silence of women on the question of restoring the name of the dead suggests that they do not share this male perspective. The women are silent. Is that fair to read into the text? Again, we have to dive into the text ourselves, and that's the way ancient literature goes. It doesn't tell us. We become part of the text. Our perspective enters in. Does the silence of the women suggest that they don't share the male perspective? So we conclude in this, men are schmucks, to employ a Yiddishism. But that's the perspective of the feminist critic Phyllis Tribble. We need to consider it, agree or disagree. A woman's story in a man's world. As it plays out, I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, wife of Machlon, to be my wife, in order that the name of the dead may not be cut off from his kindred. And then all the people who were at the gate, along with the elders, said, we are witnesses. May you produce children in Ephratah and bestow a name in Bethlehem. And through the children that Hashem will give you by this young woman, may your house be like the house of Perez and Tamar, who bore to Judah. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, Hashem made her conceive, and she bore a son. Writes Phyllis Tribble, the privacy of intercourse follows immediately the public transaction. From being the object of discussion, Ruth returns to consummate a marriage. The story is a human comedy in which the brave decisions of women embody the blessings of God. Blessings of God are not absent, but the women decide for themselves. And their decisions embody the blessings of God. It might be a way of saying God helps those who help themselves. Is it fair to say that that's the message of the story of Ruth? We have women in culture. Yes, they know it's a patriarchal society. Women against culture. They act out their own salvation anyway. women transforming culture. They not only take charge, but Boaz ends up responding to the initiative of the woman. And they are therefore symbols of radicality. Proto-feminism, as it were. Is that fair to read into the story? Pretty fascinating stuff. So is it true? God helps those women who help themselves. So let it be written. So let it be done.